Well, hey there guys, and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about risks and failure. And the best way to talk about these two different subjects, well, is to give you actual examples of my own failures and the risks that I've taken. And yeah, I'll throw in some successes there as well. Most of you don't know about my life before I got to China. And well, there's a reason for that. Number one, I don't really like to dwell on the past. And number two, well, I only actually started this channel after arriving in China. So everything that I film and talk about, well, it's got to do with my current life and everything that's going on in China. So let's talk a little bit about when I lived in South Africa. Life in South Africa can be summed up in one word, and that is struggle. You'll hear that a lot when you grow up in South Africa, that word struggle, but actually it is just one big struggle. The economy really isn't doing very well at the moment. It's an incredibly dangerous place. The crime levels are very high, and well, myself and every single member of my family and all of my friends have been affected by crime in one way or the other. It's basically just a place where very little opportunity exists, especially for someone like myself, which is a young white male. Although, to be fair, I'm not that young anymore. But when I came to China, I was 25. So opportunity is not really there, not unless you are an entrepreneur or you work very hard. You know, you're basically out of luck. So growing up in South Africa, well, it was tough. It taught me a lot of things. But my biggest point about South Africa that I'm going to talk about here, because I am going to talk about South Africa, I'm going to basically tell you guys everything. I had a successful screening company there. I started a magazine. I did all sorts of funny things. I had my own IT consulting business. I grew my career in the IT sector from working as a support technician in an ISP all the way up into network administrator for a big corporation. There's a lot of things I can talk about, but this isn't a video for that. That will come in the future. I'm going to tell you about how I left South Africa and the risk that I took leaving South Africa to come to China, and how it almost didn't happen, and why I'm really glad I took that risk. I'm going to set the stage for all of you. I was 25 years old. After many trials and errors and many ups and downs in my life, and you know, there were a lot, and I've had a lot of terrible and wonderful things happen to me living in South Africa. I'd reached a point where I thought I was fairly successful, and by successful I mean I had a lot of work. I had my own IT consulting company, and every day I'd be out on the road in my car driving to clients and to businesses to go and, I don't know, maintain their networks, fix problems, do whatever was necessary on the IT side of things. And I thought everything was going pretty well. I'd been working for about 8 years. I'd been, either working for companies or, running my own business. So I'd been out there in the workforce for 8 years. I'd managed to afford to have 2 cars. I had good furniture, I had a TV, and I had a DVD player. And don't forget, this is a long time ago when having a DVD player was kind of cool because it was really expensive. I had a good sound system, in my house. I was renting a fairly nice big cottage. And, you could say that I was fairly successful, at least appeared to be. But here's the thing about South Africa. The economy is really tanked, and well, even back then when I left, it was struggling, and work was very hard to come by, and everybody's kind of on the breadline, and debt is a big thing. I never really got into big debt myself because I refused to have a credit card, but a lot of my friends and family, well, they live in debt. They are paying the bank back because they bought a car, because, buying a car is really expensive in South Africa, a new one anyway. Even a fairly new second-hand one is really expensive. And so they're paying their car off to the bank. If they bought a house, they're paying the bank for their house. Maybe paying for their studies, paying that off, all sorts of nonsense. So most of the people that I know, growing up, my peers, were all in heavy debt to the bank or to their parents or to someone or other. They're paying them off and kind of just living on the breadline with no real spending money. Like I myself could never afford to buy anything new. Everything that I owned, basically, I would buy secondhand from cash converters, which is kind of like a big wholesale pawn shop where people go and sell their secondhand goods and get nothing for it, and then they mark it up and resell it. So yeah, my TV and my sound system and pretty much everything that I owned was secondhand, and that's just kind of the norm. That's what people do over there. Anyway, I don't want to get too much into that, like I said, so let's move on. So the opportunity came for me to move. Now, I've told this story 1,000 times. I came on a business trip. One of my clients, because of my IT consulting company, wanted me to come to Shenzhen to take a look at some products. So he paid for the plane ticket because, you know, plane tickets out of South Africa are really expensive. I'm not joking, they really are. So he paid for the plane ticket and I flew out with him, saw this amazing, exotic, wonderful place that was completely different to the big open spaces of South Africa and the sort of sports mentality and the wildlife and the nonsense that you find there. This was like an urban jungle packed with people and neon lights and all sorts of things that I really, really found appealing at the time. So I flew back and I decided I wanted to move to China. But there was something holding me back, and it was all my possessions. It was my cars. It was my business. All the contacts that I'd made, friends, family, all my, like I said, all my possessions, like my TV and my DVD player, my furniture, and, you know, pretty much my computers, all that nonsense. So I was stuck having this sort of internal battle with myself. I really, really wanted to move to China, but I was afraid that I would lose everything, as mentioned before. So I finally just, I don't know what it was inside of me, but I decided, you know what, I'm just going to do it. And I started selling all my stuff. I sold my cars, I sold all my furniture, I sold my bed, and I sold my TV, and I sold my sound system, and, you know, pretty much whatever I could sell, I sold. I got rid of everything. And then I paid off all my debt, because yes, I didn't have a credit card, but I did owe my parents some money that I borrowed from them, and a couple of other friends here and there. I owed a little bit of money. So I basically paid everyone off what I owed them, and I got the biggest shock of my life. And this is something I would like all of you to think about right now. I looked at what I had left over. After paying off my debt, you know, and selling everything that I owned, I had about 50,000 Rand, actually a bit less than that, 40-something thousand Rand left to my name. Now, that's, in the big scheme of things, nothing. I'm not sure how many US dollars it is. I'll do a conversion and put it up here on the screen. But that is what I had to my name. That's all I had to show. After 8 years of being in the workforce, 8 years of working hard, 8 years of making connections, going out, doing work every day, every week, that's what I was worth. And it was a big shocker, because that's nothing. And that's what was holding me back from taking this risk, was this measly amount of money, which honestly is not worth all the hard work and all the nonsense I had to go through to get to that point in my life. So think about it this way, guys. Do a quick calculation. Everything that you own, if you had to sell it, and if you still owe money on it, that doesn't really count, right? If you had to sell it, get rid of it, do whatever, how much money would you have left over? Is that worth the kind of work you're putting in for it? Is it really worth it? Because I realized it wasn't worth it. So it was a big eye-opener for me. After selling everything and having this money in hand, I bought my plane ticket to go over to China. Now, the plane tickets out of South Africa are really expensive. So buying the plane ticket, again, put a big dent. It was about 8,000 Rand, I believe. Put a huge dent in the money that I had. So now I was down to about 30-something thousand Rand, which, you know, it's not a lot of money. Anyway, I came to China and, well, I stayed in a hotel and I ran out of money, and, well, that's another story. I am going to make a series of videos, and this is going to happen very soon, probably going to start next week, which will tell you guys the exact story of how I managed to get off of my feet here in China from nothing to a position where I could actually live a good life and get back on my feet and all that nonsense. So that's coming. But let me just quickly put this into perspective. We're talking about risks here. That was one of the first biggest risks I'd ever taken in my life. Obviously, I've taken others, but the outcome of that risk was, first of all, for the first time in my life, I could start buying things new and buying them cash. I bought my car. Granted, it's not a good car. It's a rubbish little Chinese car. But I bought my car cash, brand new. That's the first time in my life I was ever able to do something like that. I'd had tons of cars before. So I had a brand new car that I'd bought and I didn't owe a single cent on. I've bought everything that I own new. Every time I fill up my car with petrol, I can fill it up. Whereas in South Africa, I was always kind of scrounging around, seeing what I had. 30, 40, 50 rand here, just put that in the tank. None of that nonsense. I know it's silly, but every time I pull into the petrol station, I kind of have a little smirk on my face, having filled the tank. Because, trust me, anyone who's lived in South Africa, you know what I'm talking about. There's never really enough money to go around. Okay, so the next most important thing is that I'm completely debt-free living here in China. Okay, probably due to the low cost of living compared to what you can earn here, I managed to save enough money and I am 100% debt-free. I owe nothing to a bank and I owe nothing to anybody, so I am debt-free, which is a huge weight off my shoulders. So this is a risk that I took that really, really paid off. Now, like I said, I will make a series that completely explains how I managed to get on my feet here and how I managed to become... Now, I won't call myself successful because that's absolutely absurd. I'm not successful. I'm still way off from being successful, but I am a lot more successful than I was in South Africa. So I can feel slightly proud of that, and I can share that with you. And I can tell you guys how I managed to do that, how I managed to build myself up from nothing here in China, because I really was homeless at one point here in China. And we'll get to that. Let's move on. So, risk in that aspect, that risk, it was big. And a lot of people from back home said, you're going to go to China, you're going to fail, and it's not going to work out. So I had a lot of negative people to work against. I had myself to work against because I kept trying to convince myself that I had too much to lose if I took that risk. But you know what, I took it, and here I am, and this is the result. Okay, enough about that. Let's move on to my next biggest risk, and that was getting divorced. It sounds a bit strange, but let me get into this. Nobody should be in a toxic situation. And I'm talking about relationships, and I'm also just talking about general life. There are a couple of times in my life where I've been, well, at least when I was younger, where I've been unemployed. At one point, because I went through a very terrible time in my life, which again, I will enlighten you all if you're interested in that in the future. And I lost my job as a result. I was retrenched because I was too apathetic and I wasn't doing a good job. And I ended up sort of living on my parents' farm in a small rented cottage there, and sort of doing stupid things like sitting up all night watching stupid TV shows like Ricky Lake and Oprah, and just becoming a fat slob and not doing anything. This happened to me. And there are periods that some people go through in their lives, these sort of real down periods like that, right? And it's when you're in those periods that you really need to do something to kickstart yourself, to get out of them, right? Same thing happens in a toxic relationship. If you're in a toxic relationship, as in you're very unhappy in your relationship and the other person is also very unhappy in that relationship, you have to look at yourself and think about why you're in that relationship. So I got married, and it was due to, well, I rushed into it, and it was due to all sorts of different factors. Things like family pressure, friends and family around me all getting married, and I thought I should be doing the same thing. Her family and, the Chinese whole thing about you should get married, that pressure coming in. And, whatever factors caused this to happen, I have to take full responsibility, actually, of course. I got married. And, I thought that things would get better after getting married. I was wrong. And it basically just became very difficult and a very bad relationship for both people involved. So I once again got to a point where I knew I had to get divorced. And that, again, is another big risk because you have a lot to lose. First of all, you think about things like your family. And I thought about, well, what about my family that came to my wedding and my friends? They're all going to be very disappointed in me if I get divorced, right? I mean, I had like an aunt and uncle who flew in from Australia to come to my wedding. My parents flew in from South Africa to come to my wedding, spent a lot of money, came to my wedding, and I felt really bad. Like, I'm going to let these people down because they came and they expect me to be happily married, and here I am going to get divorced. So that was a big thing stopping me from doing it. Of course, I did try very hard. I'm not trying to tell people out there that if you kind of just a little unhappy with your relationship, just get out of it. That's absolutely not right. You should work at these things. And I did for 2 years, try to work at this marriage and try to actually make it work. And it was just impossible. So I was worried about disappointing everybody. And I was also worried about disappointing all you guys on YouTube, because my marriage is up on YouTube. All of you know that I was married to Beer Girl. Everybody's, knows that as part of my life. And if I get divorced, then everybody out there will think like, what the hell's going on? So basically, I was very worried about letting people down. And at the end of the day, I realized that I'm not really helping anyone by staying in a relationship like this. So eventually things just got worse and worse, and I decided, you know what, that's it. It's not going to get better, and I am just basically wasting my life in this situation and making things worse and worse for myself and for her. So I decided that's it. Let's get divorced. I put it down. I said, this is what we have to do. And as you know, it has happened, and we are now divorced, 100% officially divorced. And that was another big risk which I took. And you know what? I couldn't be happier. And I don't want to sound smug, and I mean no disrespect to my ex-wife, because we just didn't see eye to eye, and you know, there's nothing wrong with her. It's just the chemistry was absolutely wrong. But my new fiance is amazing. This woman is the most amazing person I've met in my entire life. And a lot of you out there in the comments have said, what are you doing, man? Why do you want to get married again so quickly? What's wrong with you? You've just got divorced. What are you doing? And I'm going to tell something to you guys. Some things in life you know are right. Sometimes you know that this is the right person. Sometimes you know this is where you need to be. Sometimes you know this is what you want and what you need, and that's the way I feel about her. I absolutely have no regret. In the back of my mind, there's nothing stopping me from wanting to marry her. Whereas with my previous marriage, before getting married, I had a lot of doubts in the back of my mind, and I had a lot of ideas that, yeah, you know, this might not work out, or this is maybe a mistake. This time around, though, not a one. Absolutely, 100%, I know it's the right thing to do. So don't worry about that. That's all good. And I can promise you 100% that she's the right person for me, and we're solid, we're golden. Okay, so yes, that's another big risk that really paid off. I've never been happier in a relationship in my entire life. But it almost didn't happen because, like I said, I was too worried about getting divorced, because I was worried about all the people I might disappoint, etc., etc. So that's another risk that was worth taking. All right. Now I'm going to talk about my third and probably the final risk for this video, and that is this massive big documentary that I did. Now guys, if you haven't seen the trailer, here it is. Please go and take a look, because this is the culmination of years of work and circumstance and opportunity. And in fact, I'm going to quickly lay out for you how this happened. My YouTube channel grew more and more thanks to all of you guys out there, and that's why actually this opportunity would not have come around if it wasn't for all of you who watch me and support me. And I have to say, without a doubt, thank you. I will continue to try and give all of you out there the most that I can from my end, whatever it could be. Videos like this about advice, which could perhaps help someone out there. Videos that people out there request, you know, topics and things they want to see over here in China. I will continue to do this because I owe a lot of gratitude to all of you guys out there. And you'll see, I'm not going to stop. I will keep making videos as long as you guys keep watching them. But anyway, I'm off track again. What I wanted to say was, because my YouTube channel got more popular, people got to know about it, and finally I got interviewed by those guys up in Beijing, the CRI English, and there was that short 10-minute documentary. Here's a link if you haven't seen that. And one of the cameramen was very intrigued about the adventures I did on motorbikes, so he contacted me later and said, hey, why don't we do a documentary? And so I said, sure, why not? So he took off work, he got another friend of his who's a cameraman and a director. They flew down here, I took off work, I got my friend C-Milk involved, and we all did this together, completely self-funded. We did everything ourselves, we paid for everything ourselves, and it was, first of all, very expensive for all of us. Second of all, at the worst possible time for me, because that's when all my work contracts were being renewed at that particular time. And you see, I do contract work for this medical company, and what happens is I will start a new contract and it will last X amount of months, and then, you know, the contract finishes and then you wait a while and another one starts like that. But because I couldn't be there for the beginning of all the contracts for the year, I lost out. They had to find other people to fill in those gaps. So I basically cancelled all of my work for a whole year in order to do this documentary, which is a huge financial loss for myself, but it was a risk that I was willing to take. And, well, here's hoping that it works out, because this is what I want to do. I want this to be successful. I want to be able to make another one in the future because people enjoyed that one so much. I want this to become a career if possible. Going out there, doing adventures, making documentaries, doing this stuff for you guys on YouTube. This is what I really want to do with my life. This is something that I really have a passion for and hope works out. So I'm going for it. It's a risk I'm taking. After coming back after doing the documentary, well, I've got drips and drabs of work, enough to cover my rent, but that's about it. I'm basically back down to square one as far as my career is concerned over here. But that's okay. After a year, I should be able to pick up those contracts again and hopefully things go back to normal. But that's why I started, the patron thing, so that people, and there are some of you out there who support me on there, who think that the videos that I make are worthwhile, could support me. And I was blown away by the support because I honestly didn't expect anyone to, pay a cent. I never asked anyone to. I just put a link at the end of my videos, and I'm already up to $350 a month, which is awesome. That is covering half my rent. And the drips and drabs I get from YouTube monetization, which, by the way, is absolutely nothing. It goes up and down, and it's pretty much nothing. But that combined with the Patreon is already at a point where it can pretty much cover my rent every month, which is fantastic. That really spurs me on so that I can make more and more videos for you guys and just dedicate more and more time. So 2016 is going to be a year of risks for me. I'm planning on focusing a lot on my YouTube channel, making it better for all of you out there. I'm going to try and improve my camera work. I'm also going to try and make it a little more structured, a little better, focus on more important topics. And also, I'm doing this adventure talk show on 2 wheels thing every Monday and Tuesday, where I drive up to Huizhou and get together with my friend Seamilk, and we ride our bikes and talk about a topic usually related to China, but I think we're going to spread out into other topics as well. So I'm kind of trying to develop that as well. So it seems to all be video related. I have still got some work, obviously just enough to pay rent, but I'm focusing more on this, taking a bit of a risk, and if things get too tight, I might have to scale back on the video stuff and get back into, working more. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. I hope that I can be an inspiration for somebody out there who is currently maybe sitting at home, procrastinating with their life, being very lethargic, not knowing where to go, sitting there watching Jerry Springer on TV every day, or perhaps someone who's in an unhappy relationship, someone who's just unhappy with their lives, someone who doesn't really know where they're going or what it is they want to do with their life. I hope that you can see this video and get a little bit of inspiration, and remember that it doesn't matter if you fail. Take the risk, because 100% of shots not taken miss. I'd like to finish this video off with a quote from the gent who I actually got my name from, Winston Churchill, and he said, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." And I cannot tell you just how relevant that quote is, because I don't consider myself successful yet. And even if I was successful, I'd still want to keep trying to be more successful. And not in a selfish way, just in a way so that I could be success to those around me and help people around me and help my fiancé and my family and my friends. Second is, failure is not fatal. If you fail that important exam at school, you're not going to die. All right? If you get fired from your job, you're not going to die. All right? If you lose all of your worldly possessions like I did at one point or 2 points in my life, you will not die. Things can be replaced. It doesn't matter. Failure isn't fatal. But the courage to continue is what counts. And that's why at the end of all my videos I say to all of you, and will continue to always say, stay awesome.